Now...
The train. Should be on the train. Peter. Unless Peter. Oh.
In a vast, desolate landscape, torn by wind, part night, part day, a woman's bare feet stumble through the grass.
The train. Couldn't stay on the train.
Her robes, a nightdress, and a silken dressing gown flow out behind her in the wind. Her hair, long and blonde, is blown over her face. She doesn't notice it. She doesn't see anything.
I must get away. Away from it. The dead man. How can I talk to a dead man?
Jessica slips, stumbles, and falls onto the grass.
No. Let him come here. Don't let him. Please.
She groans, turns on her back, and stares up at the wild sky. Her blue eyes flood with tears. All is quiet but the sound of the dying wind. Episode 1 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel discover a case of amnesia and wonder if it could lead to a grave charge. The Humpington Hospital is situated in spacious grounds near the river at Bury St. Edmunds in the county of Suffolk. It is the sort of rambling, friendly hospital to which many patients are sent when they reach the convalescent stage of recovery. In a private ward, small single room, a young woman is lying in bed. She stirs occasionally, muttering incoherently. Sometimes her blue eyes open, but they see nothing. On a small side table near the bed is a tape recorder. It is on. The red dial shows it is recording, but there's little to record.
No. It can't be. No.
It's all right. There's nothing to worry about now.
Mrs. Peel rose from a chair and switched the recorder off.
Just rest now. Close your eyes and rest.
Mrs. Peel walked to the window and gazed out at the grey skies. There was more than a hint of rain in the air. It was overcast and somewhat depressing. She turned from the window back to the patient. As she did so, the door opened. It was Steed and Mother. Steed was pushing Mother's wheelchair.
I can only hope this doesn't take too long, Steed.
Well, that rather depends on many things, doesn't it, Mother?
God, they are hospitals, depressing places. Spent too long in them. And when I came out of them, where do I end up? In a wheelchair.
Well, at least it's mobile. Morning, Mrs. Peel.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Mother.
I fail to see anything remotely good about it, Mrs. Peel. This is the girl, is it? Yeah, well, any progress?
Nothing. She hasn't said anything at all coherent. Just a lot of vague mutterings which mean nothing.
Nothing means something. Yeah. The doctor says she's suffering from concussion, lacerations, abrasions, bruises, and severe shock. Nothing too serious. Yes. Oh, let's have a look at her. What do you think, Steed?
Well, she's pretty.
I meant the situation.
Unpleasant for her. Do you know who she is yet?
Helen Pritchard. The secretary works in London.
Quick work. That part was easy.
We traced her by the clothes she was wearing. There they are.
Steed walked over and with the tip of his umbrella hooked up a soiled dressing gown and nightdress.
That's all? I thought you said she was found in a field.
She was.
Wearing just these?
Wearing just those. Intriguing, eh?
Not to mention chilly.
Steed, I do wish you'd take this seriously.
Well, is it? Serious, I mean? You said yourself she isn't badly hurt. I mean, there's no bones broken. All right, the circumstances are bizarre, but there doesn't seem much that nursing and a careful psychological approach can't cure.
I agree.
Are you both trying to override my judgment?
Well, simply trying to understand it. I mean, why should you feel this is so important? And why should we become involved?
Vanity.
Eh?
My vanity. It's all I have left these days. Vanity. I want to put one over on that new department. You know, the one formed to investigate strange and inexplicable happenings.
Oh, you mean the one they've given to old Croaker Wazegoose?
Yeah, that's right. Either that or pensioning him off, out to grass and all that. Really presents no opposition, but it'd be nice to beat them at their own game, establish superiority at once.
It would be nice, Steed.
Personally, I've always thought that Wazegoose was a strange and inexplicable happening in himself. All right, if you think that's sufficient reason, I've no objections to working on this young lady. That is what I... It is.
I'll be around, Mother. Don't worry.
Just as well.
Found in the middle of nowhere, eh?
A field down by the river.
Wearing a nightdress, eh?
Right.
Well, then.
Yes, Steed.
Doesn't make sense. I mean, where on earth did she come from?
Oh, wheel me out, Mrs. Peel. Tell Steed to come to me the moment he's found that out.
The natural place to start, even for Steed, was the place where Helen Pritchard had been found. Steed enlisted the help of one of Mother's men, Captain Cordell, commandeered a station wagon, and was driven to the spot.
Pretty bleak out here, sir.
Bouncy, too.
Yes. She was found about here, sir.
Thank heavens for that. We've arrived, I mean. As you say, bleak.
Steed stood up in the station wagon and looked around him.
Sweet, nothing at all. She must have walked quite a way, whatever direction she came from. A river down there, and a railway over there. No damp on the clothing, so one might rule out the riverside. And the railway... Yes, that's the next stop. The nearest railway station, Captain.
Right,
I think we'll have a progress report to give Mother after all.
And an hour or so later, Captain Cordell made his report to Mother, who'd established a headquarters in the doctor's staff room. It was near the canteen, and it had a bar.
Better. The train, you say, Cordell?
That's right, sir. The train went through about an hour before Helen Pritchard was found in that field. Now, the field was a big one. There's a busy road on one side, a river flowing on the other. It's not likely that Miss Pritchard could have got into the field from Bury St. Edmunds without being seen. If she'd come from the river, the chances are she'd have had mud or water stains on her clothing. But if she'd come off the train, it was the night express, and it was a sleeper.
A train.
That would explain the nightdress. She was traveling in a sleeping berth.
I fully appreciate the ramifications of the discovery, Captain Cordell, so she came off a train. But one thing remains unanswered.
I can guess what you're thinking, sir.
Yes. Did she fall, or was she pushed?
In the small private ward, Helen Pritchard seemed rather less restless. She was now awake, but her eyes were still vague, uncomprehending. She stared about her as Cordell entered.
Are you feeling any better?
I don't know.
I'm Emma Peel. This is John Steed. Oh, and,
Cordell, Captain Peter Cordell.
Peter. Peter. The name Peter.
You can't recall your own name?
No. Yes. No, I don't know.
Pritchard. You are Helen Pritchard.
Helen...
You were traveling somewhere, Helen.
You took a train. A night sleeper. You remember taking a train?
Yes.
You took a train. You were on it. And then?
A coffin. A dead man. A dead man in his coffin. A dead man who isn't dead. Ah! Oh, no!
Helen, please, it's all right. Easy now, easy. There. Well, whatever it was that happened, she doesn't want to remember.
A dead man in his coffin. A dead man who isn't dead?
It's quite a coincidence. You see, there was a coffin aboard that train. I ran a checklist of passengers and freight. There was a coffin aboard.
Inhabited?
It had a dead man in it, all right.
Where was it going?
To a place called the Happy Meadows for burial.
Steed had no trouble in tracing the Happy Meadows burial ground. It announced itself with a large sign which read, Happy Meadows, the inn place to be buried in. Steed found the manager's office. That read, Be a happy chap. Steed raised an eyebrow, removed his bowler, rapped on the door with his umbrella, and entered. The slim young man behind the desk looked up with tremendous enthusiasm.
Good morning, my dear sir. Good morning to you.
Good morning. My name is Steed, John Steed.
Happy chap.
Moderately today.
No, you don't understand. I am a happy chap. Bagpipes, happy chap.
How do you do? Bagpipes?
My father's fault, you see. When my mother told him, well, she was presenting him with a squeaky little bundle, he was convinced that she meant the set of bagpipes he'd always set his heart on. And then when I arrived, well, it was his way of fighting back.
A sad burden.
Yes, and I'm not even Scots. If I'd been a Scot, at least the name would have had a partisan ring about it.
Well, never mind. Look on the bright side. Your father might have had an obsession about synthesizers. Or are you too old for that?
Quite so. Well, now, sir, to business. Mind you, looking you over, I can't quite see that we will be doing business for quite some time ahead. But you are planning, no doubt. Yes, to select your plot now. Now, here is the ledger.
Well, actually, I really didn't...
You are in luck. I can squeeze you in between two peers of the realm. Or perhaps you would prefer this one. It has an admiral to your port, a midshipman to your starboard, and a submarine commander astern of you.
Yes, well, I'm not here on that kind of business.
Oh, I see. Well, in that case...
A body was brought here the other day by train. Do you recall it?
Oh, indeed I do. A Class 1 interment with 17 wreaths of assorted plastic flowers, simulated mock marble headstone. They stand up to the elements far better than the real thing, you know. And our special offer, oak casket. Get in while stocks last. I remember it precisely.
Yes. Where is the body buried?
In our most exclusive area, Paradise Plot. Believe me, Mr. Steed, you just haven't lived until you're buried in Paradise Plot.
Now?
My dear Steed, I'm sure that you must have been personally recommended to come here.
Well, I told you, Mr. Happychap, my interest in your burial concern is not personal. I've come to investigate the death of a gentleman who arrived here a few days ago. His body was brought by rail. You have admitted that you remember him.
Well, I have told you so. Yes, indeed, a most fortunate body. He was sent to our most exclusive section, the Paradise Plot.
I see. Well, I wonder if you'd be so good as to give me more particulars.
Oh, willingly. But would you not like to see the grounds? They're the most well cared for in the whole country. Modeled on American lines, of course. So advanced. But one must hand it to our American friends in these matters. They're so much more alive than we are, aren't they? This way, Mr. Steed.
Episode 2 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel find out more about Helen Pritchard's strange illness, and Steed follows through on an idea which becomes a grave charge. It was basically all Mother's fault. It started with the appointment of old Croker Waysgoose as head of a new department formed to investigate strange and inexplicable happenings. Mother's vanity was hurt. He thought his own department more than capable of covering such cases. And so, when lovely Helen Pritchard was found suffering from loss of memory in a field near Bury St. Edmunds, Steed and Mrs. Peel were called in to clear up the mystery. Steed found that Helen Pritchard remembered very little of what had occurred, and could only recall a man who was dead, and connected him with a coffin and a train. Steed found out the night train upon which Helen had been traveling was taking a dead man to a certain burial ground, the Happy Meadows burial ground.
This way, Mr. Steed. You will note how well arranged everything is. All the graves, the headstones.
Well, it's certainly well laid out.
This is the most exclusive section, the Paradise Plot.
Ah, paradise found at last.
Good morning, Tom.
Morning to ye, Mr. Happy Man.
Chap. Hey? Chap. Oh, never mind. Are we keeping you busy, Tom?
Oh, I gotta keep digging away, you know. Gotta be ready for this afternoon, 3:00.
Yes, I recall. Nathaniel Lost. Very sad, disappointing.
A dead loss, in fact.
Come, Mr. Steed. This is what I wanted you to see.
Goodbye, Dewey, Mr. Happy Child.
Here we are. Is this the chap who arrived by train? It says Jonathan Jupp. Are you sure this is the one?
Well, of course. We can't afford to make mistakes in this business.
Jonathan Jupp. Now, just where have I heard that name before? And quite recently.
At the hospital, Emma Peel was concentrating on getting some sense out of Helen Pritchard. She sat with her and Captain Cordell, going over the whole thing once again.
Talk to us, Helen. Tell us everything you can remember.
A train. I was on a train.
Very good. Now, you still remember your name?
Helen. Helen Pritchard?
That's excellent. Now, you're Helen Pritchard. You're on a train traveling somewhere. Now, where, Helen? Where are you going?
I don't know.
It's all right. Leave that for a moment. Something happened on the train. You fell out, you tripped. Did you fall, Helen?
Train.
Not much progress so far, Mrs. Peel.
No, I find it rather worrying. We've got her so far and her mind just won't go any farther. She doesn't want to know any more. She'd sooner stay in this state. It's less painful than remembering.
May I try something?
Oh, hello, Steve. Back again?
Hello, Mr. Steed. What do you suggest, sir? There's no progress.
Well, I've got something here that might just strike a few chords.
Photographs? Of whom?
Never mind. You won't recognize the person, but she just might. Helen, I want you to look at these pictures. Tell me if you recognize anyone.
Helen Pritchard registered what she was asked. She took the photographs and began to go through them. She came to one that made a violent impression upon her. She dropped the photograph.
Oh, no.
You know this man? You've seen him? His name is Jonathan Jupp. Do you know him?
Yes, he's dead. He's dead on a train. Peter.
Peter? Peter who?
Peter, my dog. And that man. Oh, no!
Steed realized that the last scream Helen gave was different. It was a scream of recognition as she stared yet again at the photograph of Jonathan Jupp. Her mind had cleared. She sat straight up in bed.
I remember.
Here, Helen, take it easy. Drink this water.
Thank you. It was late. I had my dog Peter with me on the train. He was traveling with me. But he had to spend the night in the guard's van. I was all ready for bed in my sleeping car when I wondered if Peter was all right. He could be hungry or knocked his water over, anything. I wanted to be sure. And so I went along the corridor to the guard's van to find out. It was dark. The whole train was asleep. I made my way along the dimly lit corridor and into the guard's van. There was Peter, so pleased to see me. Oh, now, Peter. There, that's good. Doc? There, I brought you some food. Look, here you are. That's it. I've got plenty of water. Good boy. I knew that there was a coffin at the back of the guard's van, but the knowledge didn't scare me. Not at all the spooky type. But I was aware of it all the same. I told myself that dead men can't hurt you. I put Peter down near his box, patted him. There, Peter. Be a good dog. Go to sleep. And turned to go. Then as I saw it. fell against the edge of the opening. The man pushed me hard. I tried to find a grip in the woods. I couldn't. I remember screaming as I fell out into the wind and the darkness. It was him, the man in this photograph. I'm quite sure of it. This was the man, and he is alive.
Mother listened to Steed's story in complete silence, and then said,
Do you believe her?
Well, it sounded very convincing, the way she told it.
Nevertheless, she is suffering from concussion. There was a coffin on the train. She admits seeing it. The rest could be a figment of her imagination, an hallucination brought on by her injuries.
Agreed, except for two things. One, she did pick out Jupp's photo.
Granted. And two?
Jonathan Jupp. He was a financier.
Of course, I remember him now. Involved in some shady deal or other, wasn't he?
He was about to be prosecuted for fraud when he died of a heart attack.
Convenient.
Very. It makes one wonder if it wasn't too convenient. Now, if he was alive in that coffin...
But you've seen his grave.
His grave, yes.
But not inside it.
Exactly.
All right. I'll get an exhumation order at once.
And that was why, some hours later, Steed presented himself again at the office of Mr. Happychap, whose appearance hardly lived up to his name.
I won't pretend that I like this, Mr. Steed. I won't pretend that I like it at all.
None of us do, Mr. Happychap, but it has to be done in the interest of the law. We'll do it with the utmost discretion and respect.
But what about the grass? I mean, it's absolutely ruin it. Oh, all right. Very well, then. I'll find Tom and Bob and let's get the whole thing over with.
Later, Steed looked down at the shrouded body of Jonathan Jupp, who lay peacefully in his coffin. Happychap, furious, stood by his side.
Well, Mr. Steed, satisfied?
Satisfied and mystified. Well, thanks, Happychap. I just wanted to make sure he was here.
Well, really? Oh, this is the end.
Mrs. Peel was feeling quite confident that the case would soon be over. Helen Pritchard's story would be confirmed. Jonathan Jupp would be exposed as a man who had plotted his own death to escape arrest, and all would be solved. Easy as that. She got some magazines and started to make some phone calls. At that very moment, on the fire escape outside Helen's window, a large, burly man was forcing an entrance.
Just a little more. That's it.
Helen, from the bed, gave a startled scream.
Who are you? What do you want?
You.
The man's large hand went over Helen's mouth, stifling her cries for help. With the other hand, the man brought up a gun to level at her head.
Now.
The door opened swiftly. Mrs. Peel came in. She took in the scene at a glance, flung the magazines at the man's face, and hurtled forward across the room, crashing him against the wall. The man yelled, slid down the wall into a heap, shot with his own gun. Now, on the fire escape outside Helen Pritchard's room, a large, burly man was forcing an entrance.
Just a little more. That's it.
Helen, from the bed, gave a startled scream.
Who are you? What do you want?
You.
The man's large hand went over Helen's mouth, stifling her cries for help. With the other hand, the man brought up a gun to level at her head.
Now.
The door opened swiftly. Mrs. Peel came in. She took in the scene at a glance, flung herself across the room, crashing the man against the wall. The man yelled and slowly slid down the wall into a heap, shot with his own gun. Episode 3 of this story, in which Emma Peel protects her charge, and John Steed unearths a few empty facts in... A grave charge. Mother, with an unerring instinct for scenting out trouble, had guessed that the amnesia case suffered by Helen Pritchard was the key to a much more complicated mystery. He was right. Helen swore that Jonathan Jupp, a rather shady financier who was reported to have died on the eve of his arrest for embezzlement, was still alive. Steed's investigations had taken him to the Happy Meadows burial ground. With an exhumation order, he'd prevailed on the manager, Mr. Happy Chap, to prove that Jupp was indeed reposing in the special area known as Paradise Plot. Returning to Mother at his headquarters in Humpington Hospital, Steed was rather gloomy.
Well, we were wrong, Mother. Jupp's buried, all right, and quite dead. So the whole affair's over, and that's that.
I'm afraid not.
But it must be. Helen Pritchard must have been suffering from hallucinations when she reported that the man was alive on that train. There's nothing more to it.
There's a devil of a lot more to it.
What do you mean? What's happened? Cordell?
There's been a murder attempt on Helen Pritchard while you've been away, Mr. Steed.
What? Unfortunately true. Fortunately, Mrs. Peel was splendidly on form and able to foil the attack. And again, unfortunately, the man was killed in the struggle by his own gun.
Oh, well, that does seem to complicate things. But all right, it still doesn't mean that her story about Jupp was correct.
There's a little bit more to it than that, Mr. Steed. You see, we've identified the attacker. His name was Brad Morton.
Brad Morton? Another quite familiar name.
Morton was a financier, a very clever one. Too clever for his own and other people's good. When last heard of, he was on the brink of being prosecuted for fraud.
Just as Jupp was. But you said this one's death wasn't engineered. You said yourself it was an accident.
Brad Morton officially died 6 months ago of a heart attack.
Also just like Jupp's. Oh, wait a minute. Don't tell me where he's buried.
Yes, you've got it, Steed. Officially, he rests at Happy Meadows. Yes, you have my permission. I'll arrange it immediately.
Mr. Happy Chap's face fell considerably the moment he saw Steed's car park outside. When Steed came into his office, cheerfully waving a piece of paper, Happy Chap gave a horrified groan.
No, I don't believe it. Not another one.
Afraid so, Happy Chap. Here's the order.
You wish to exhume another one? Oh, really, Mr. Steed, this morbid curiosity is verging on an obsession. If it's the actual digging that interests you, may I suggest that you take up gardening? I mean, roses, for instance. I mean, plant now, and by the summer you should have a fine show of all kinds.
Mr. Happy Chap, this is business. These things have to be done.
Oh, very well, then. But if this ever gets out in the trade...
Oh, it won't. It'll be our secret.
Well, I mean, it's all so insecure. I mean, people like to think of permanence in these matters. I mean, up and down all the time. People would think I'm running a motel.
Mr. Happy Chap.
Oh, very well. Which one is it this time?
Outside the Humpington Hospital, a car drew up. No one got out, at least not immediately. The two men inside sat and talked.
That's it. That's the wing, Charlie. Up there, that window near the fire escape. The name is Helen Pritchard, Ward 10.
Right.
Yeah. It's a gun, Charlie.
Right.
And don't fail.
Right.
Go on, then. How'd you get?
Right.
Upstairs in Private Ward 10, Captain Cordell was fixing a heavy shutter over Helen's window.
There you are. Need a battering ram to get in here now.
Oh, thank you, Captain. I feel very much better for your protection.
That's good. Now, Helen, dear, do you think you could go over it all again, just once again?
But I've told you everything I can.
Well, you've told us all you remember. But perhaps if you told us again and thought it out more, you might remember more.
Oh, all right. Here goes.
When the man Charlie climbed the fire escape, he could only hear the voices.
That's really all I can recall. I've been thinking about nothing else. Going over and over it.
Oh, well, there's no need to worry about Peter.
Me? Oh, you mean the little dog? It's all right, is it?
Yes, quite safe and well cared for.
Charlie was extremely frustrated. He could just see through the shutters, but there was no way he could aim a shot into the room. Infuriated, he made his way back to the car.
It's no go.
No go? What do you mean?
Oh, she's barricaded in up there. Not a chance of getting at her. I tell you, she's heavily guarded. If you want to knock off that bird, you'll have to do a lot of clever thinking. A straightforward job is definitely out.
While at Happy Meadows...
Well, Mr. Steed, I hope you have a suitably guilty conscience.
Well, this is the one, all right. Brad named Morton. All right, let's see.
Right. To me, Bob. To you, Tom.
Oh, careful now, careful. Oh. Oh, my word.
Yes, the coffin was empty.
He's been stolen, taken away. There's a thief in our midst.
Right, come on.
Where to?
I want to use your phone. All right, you two, as you were.
I reckon we'll never be as we were ever again. What do you say, Bob?
Mother was sipping a gin and Italian, smoking a French cigarette, nibbling a piece of Danish cheese, and reading a German newspaper when the telephone rang. Mother threw down the paper.
Oh, to the devil with the common market. Mother?
Mother, Steed here. We are on to something. He isn't there.
Who is not where?
Brad named Morton. There's a coffin, all right, but no body.
Body snatchers in this day and age?
Looks like, but for what reason is beyond me. Although, I have been reading the headstone.
Reading teacups or even other people's greasy palms, I can understand. And perhaps forgive. Tombstones, never.
Well, listen to this lot. John Ash, George and Tony Barter, Pat Vernon.
Look, Steed, will you stop sounding like the manager of a third-league football team and endeavor to make yourself more coherent?
Think about those names, Mother.
Barter, Vernon. Ah, yes, of course, all financiers.
All involved in seedy deals, and all of them buried here in Paradise Plot.
I see. Well, if you're sure, then I suppose there's only one thing for it.
Steed, from his end of the line, cast a sly glance at Happy Chap, who was sitting in a chair with a dazed expression on his face. He looked up at Steed with a spaniel-like plea in his eyes.
Mr. Steed, you wouldn't be considering...
Well, that's the position, Mother. I don't know if you think we should.
I most certainly do. See what you can dig up.
You mean all of them?
What other alternative have you? Yes, all of them. Agreed?
Yes. Well, yes, I agree. There's no other way.
Then attend to it.
Yes, Mother. Yes, I'll attend to it. Bye. Mr. Happy Chap. A bagpipes, old man. A baggered old chap. I don't want this to come as too much of a shock, but, yes.
All of them?
That's right. John Ash, George Barter, Tony Barter, Patrick Vernon.
Later, much later.
John Ash, George Barter, Tony Barter, Patrick Vernon. All of them up, all of them open, and all of them
Empty.
I'm afraid so, Happy Chap.
But it's so awful. I mean, it's simply awful. Oh, it's too awful. There's nobody left.
The great grave robber in.
But what do we do?
Do? Well, back to square one, if you ask me. Jonathan Jupp.
Oh, no, not again.
I wish they'd make up their minds. I do that. We'll be charging overtime, Mr. Happy Feller. I warned you that.
And later still.
Right. To me, Bob. There. To you, Tom.
Et tu, Juppy. Also shuffled off this immortal coil.
It is impossible. In the midst of death, we are in life.
So it seems. A short time ago, Jupp was dead and buried, and now... Well, if he is alive, where the devil is he?
But no one knew it. But only a short way away.
Everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Jupp?
Oh, everything. Never enjoyed myself more.
Nothing you want?
No, thanks. Wine, women, and song. There's only one thing that would rarely give me added satisfaction. I'd love to see the look on my wife's face if she knew where I was now.
Now...
It looked rather like a nightclub, and sounded like one too. Subdued lighting, music, girls, food, drink, and lots of businessmen. Well, ex-businessmen.
Everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Jupp?
Oh, everything.
Nothing you want there?
Oh, no, thanks. Wine, women, and song. No police on my tail. Who could ask for more? There is only one thing more I'd like.
And that is?
I'd like to see my wife's face if she knew where I was now.
The Avengers.
Episode 4 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel continue their investigations into the mysteries that surround Happy Meadows and point out that assuming a false identity can lead to a grave charge. John Steed, with Mother's approval, had continued to unearth even more trouble at Happy Meadows. Examining the headstones of those buried at Paradise Place, he quickly recognized at least 4 well-known financiers who had died just in time to avoid arrests by the police over shady business deals. When the coffins were opened, they were all found to be empty. Steed was baffled, so was Mrs. Peel, but she knew her job was to protect Helen Pritchard, who was somehow connected with the mystery. On the other hand, Captain Peter Cordell was free to pursue another line of investigation. He went to see Mrs. Jupp, widow of Jonathan Jupp, whose so-called death had started it all.
I don't see how I can help you, Mr. Cordell. My husband's death was very sudden, and he didn't leave me well provided for.
That in itself is curious, Mrs. Jupp.
Oh? In what way?
Well, you know, there was a great deal of money missing from his company.
Yes, but wherever he put it, the secret died with him. You can't take it with you, you know.
So they say. A heart attack, wasn't it?
That's right. I found him lying just there on the lion skin rug. His head back on the lion's head. So peaceful, as though he was asleep. He hadn't been ill at all. Never a day's illness all his life. It all happened without him any warning, and just as he was planning to take me away.
Away? Away where?
Well, he didn't tell me himself, you understand, but I overheard him talking on the phone to Mystic Tours. He was arranging a trip, arranging to go away for a long time.
A long time? You heard him say that?
Oh, yes, quite clearly.
And he arranged this through Mystic Tours. You're quite sure of that?
Oh, yes, quite sure.
But where was he planning to go, Mrs. Jupp?
He didn't say exactly, but it was somewhere nice, somewhere absolutely beautiful.
What made you think that?
Because I heard him say where he was going would be paradise. Absolute paradise.
The next move was pretty obvious. Captain Cordell looked up the address of Mystic Tours. It was a very small and exclusive travel bureau. Behind the counter stood one of the men who tried to organize breaking into Helen Pritchard's ward at the Huntington Hospital. His name was Shaw. Cordell approached and began thumbing through some brochures.
Find anything you like, sir?
Not really, no.
How about our all-inclusive European junket? 9 countries in 4 days by coach.
By coach in 4 days?
The driver used to be a Grand Prix contestant. You don't have to get off the coach at all, actually. We provide written summaries of all the memorable experiences you might be lucky to have had in each city, to impress your friends, you know. We even provide snapshots of you superimposed onto shots outside the Louvre and the Vatican. We also...
No, thank you. No, that's not what I'm after. I'm looking for something a little more, relaxing. An escape, in fact.
An escape from the cares of the world.
Well, actually, a bit more than that. A spot of business trouble, you understand. I'd like to get away from it all for a while. Somewhere cool.
Cool?
Well, I anticipate a hot spell in this country. If I stay here, that is.
Any other requirements about where you want to escape to, sir?
What I'm looking for is paradise. Absolute paradise.
Paradise?
Paradise. I was told you could provide such a place.
I see. I think you'd better step into the other office. This way, if you please.
While all this was happening, Steed was reporting to Mother. Both looked extremely puzzled.
But how are they doing it, Steed? And why?
And who are they, Mother? And where are they?
Well, graveyard dug up, looted, coffins all empty. How on earth?
My guess is that it happens at night.
There's no night guard at Happy Meadows.
Oh, no. Why should there be? After all, there's no reason to think that the inhabitants are going anywhere.
No, but all the same, Mother?
Mother, it's Cordell here. I'm onto it all.
You're what?
Listen, I'm taking a big chance calling you. They're watching me the whole time.
Who's watching you, and where are you?
They're coming back. I have to go. I'll call you later if I can.
Cordell, where are you?
I'm on my way to paradise.
What? Oh, Cordell! Cordell! Oh, on his way to paradise.
What? Oh, well, then so am I.
Bye, Mother.
It took Steed a little time to get back to Happy Meadows. When he did, Mr. Happy Chap's perpetual smile faded instantly. He moaned softly.
Oh, no. No, not again. I can't stand it. Now listen, Mr. Steed. They're all staying where they are. All of them.
It's information I want this time.
Oh, well, that's better. What can I do for you?
Well, if a man called Cordell comes here... Now, if he phones you...
Cordell? Peter Cordell?
Yes, that's right. How did you know?
Well, he's already here.
What?
Arrived only a few minutes ago. Knocked down by a car, poor chap. His dying wish was to be interred in Paradise Plot.
Steed, are you sure he was dead?
No respiration, no heartbeat. Ice cold. Yes, he was dead. Anyway, it's a bit late for that question. He's already buried now.
Well, what now?
A night vigil. See if we can catch the grave robbers red-handed. I'll watch round the clock from dusk to dawn.
Yeah, excellent, Steed, excellent. Esprit de corps and all that dedicated devotion to duty. Heedless of sleep of the wintry night.
Well, wake me if anything happens, won't you? I've given the job to Mrs. Peel.
Emma Peel wasn't overexcited at the assignment, but having spent most of the case in the confines of the Huntington Hospital, she thought it might provide a little fresh air and action.
No action, but a devil of a lot of fresh air.
Oh, it's all too terrible. My reputation has gone. Mr. Steed has destroyed it. We are not good friends at the moment, Mrs. Peel. I can't think what to do about it.
Under any other circumstances, I'd suggest you buried the hatchet. But it would only crop up again.
But why do I have to sit out here in the cold at night?
Mr. Happy Chap, in all criminal cases there are suspects. You are in charge of Happy Meadows. You know nothing about it when 4 of your charges disappear. Now, don't you think...
You mean you think Mr. Steed thinks...
Exactly. You are suspect number 1. Oh. And this is your chance to clear yourself. Now shift along the tombstone and spare me a bit more of the blanket before rigor mortis sets in.
Mrs. Peel and Mr. Happy Chap sat out the dark, cold nights miserably. Unaware that only a short way away, their colleague, Captain Cordell, was truly making a night of it.
Hello there. Jupp's the name. Jonathan Jupp.
Peter Cordell.
New here, aren't you? Well, welcome to the club, as they say.
Thank you. Yes, I've just arrived. It's quite a place.
Oh, lives up to its name, all right. You here for the same reason as the rest of us, I take it?
I think so.
Trouble in the other world, shall we say?
Yes, that's about it.
Well, nothing to worry about here. Plenty to eat, to drink, lots of girls. Oh, yes. Paradise, what?
Everything all right, gentlemen? Are you comfortable?
Never better, Mr. Shaw.
Don't forget, if there's anything that you need...
the only thing I'll need is a good long holiday when I get out of here.
Enjoy it all while you can. Hey, come on, Charlie, let's check the exit.
Yeah, right. May as well. Hey, who's this?
Oh, Mr. Cordell. He's our latest arrival.
Why, him? But he was at the hospital. He was the one who was guarding Ellen Pritchard.
What? What are you talking about? What hospital? Look, I...
But Shaw had already taken a revolver from his shoulder holster. Old Tom and Bob, coming on duty through the mist and wet grass, found Mrs. Peel and Mr. Happychap, bleary-eyed, peering out from under the blanket.
Well, nothing happened. Here it is another day, and nothing has happened. All I've caught is a cold.
Mr. Happychap, I've got an idea.
What?
Mrs. Peel's eyes went to a recently built mound of earth, which marked Captain Cordell's plot. Happychap caught on quickly.
Mrs. Peel. I mean, Mrs. Peel, I appeal to you.
But Mrs. Peel had already beckoned to old Tom, and sometime later...
Mr. Happy Boy. Bob and me be as expert now at bringing them up as we are putting them down.
Aye. To you, Tom. That's it, sir.
Well, come on. Although what you think you'll find, Mrs. Peel.
Well, there's one of them, safe and sound.
There, you see. He's still there. Still dead.
Yes, except this time the cause of death is clear. He's been shot. Look there.
In the middle of Cordell's forehead was a neat, black bullet hole. Now...
No, Mrs. Peel. I positively refuse to allow it. I beg you not to. Now, Captain Cordell is here. Please leave him here.
But Mrs. Peel beckoned to old Tom and Bob, and they got to work. Some time later...
Oh, well, come on, then. Let's find out what it's all about. Although I must say, I think you're mistaken, as usual, Mrs. Peel.
We'll see.
Ah, there, you see? He's still there. He's still dead.
Yes, except that this time the cause of death is quite clear. He's been shot. Look there.
In the middle of Cordell's forehead was a neat, black bullet hole. Episode 5 of this story, in which John Steed has a completely new experience, and Mrs. Peel wonders if his disappearance might not give rise to... a grave charge. Captain Eric Cordell had been part of the investigating team in a case which started with Helen Pritchard losing her memory, having been thrown from a train. She thought she'd seen a man who was dead. Later, it was proved that he was still alive. John Steed and Emma Peel, who had been called in, had unearthed many baffling facts at the Happy Meadows burial ground. In a considerable number of cases, coffins in the Paradise plot had been found to be empty. Mrs. Peel and Mr. Happychap, the manager of the concern, had spent a long night's vigil watching for grave snatchers. There had been none. Later, Mrs. Peel got a hunch about Captain Cordell's demise. She reported to Mother.
Shot.
Shot.
We sound like a commentary on a table tennis match.
But Cordell wasn't shot. I saw the body myself. Not a mark on him.
Shot. I saw the mark on him, the forehead. Cordell is in the Paradise plot. He is dead and he was murdered. Shot.
No, don't start all that all over again. Any ideas?
Well, that's a long shot.
Steed!
Oh, sorry, Muller.
I wonder if it's too late to hand this case over to another department.
Emma, you say that you stayed at the Paradise plot all night?
I did. You can ask Happychap. He was there with me. He'll tell you.
Yes, he, of course, would be uncompromising.
So, no one approached the grave during the night?
No one.
How could all this happen?
The underground movement, it must be.
There's got to be a logical explanation.
Well, if there is, I don't...
Ticket?
I suppose it's only to be expected. It's an open and shut case. Open the grave, shut up the grave.
You say that Happy Chap was with you all the time. He can witness to all this?
He can. What do we do?
Get rid of the case. Hand it back to old Croker Way's Goose and his new department. I could dress up the report and make it seem simple and straightforward. Be, down to earth, in fact.
I think we've got to carry on, approach it from another angle.
What does that mean, Steed?
Cordell ended up dead, but he started by talking to Mrs. Jupp, the widow of Jonathan Jupp, right?
Yes, that's so.
Well, then I think I must travel the same road. I'll pay Mrs. Jupp a visit. What do you say?
What do I... Be careful.
But surely there was nothing to fear from a visit to Mrs. Jupp. The strange little woman was becoming quite bewildered by unexpected callers. During all her long years of marriage to Jonathan Jupp, she'd hardly seen another man. Now she'd seen two in as many days.
Yes, Mr. Cordell was here. He was so very nice.
And he inquired into the circumstances of your husband's death?
Yes, of course, I couldn't tell him a great deal. Just that I was left rather impoverished. He said that surely that was rather strange because Jonathan was a rich man, and I said...
Right.
No, I said you can't take it with you.
I wonder...
That's what he said.
Mrs. Jupp, can you tell me, how is it that Happy Meadows came into this? I mean, what arrangements were made?
You know, that is the strange thing, Mr. Steed. I was never consulted.
Then how did Cordell get in touch with them?
I don't know. I can only tell you that at one point he became very excited when I mentioned that my husband was taking me away on a trip.
Oh?
Yes, it was being planned by Mystic Tours.
Mystic Tours? I think that's what I came to find out. Thank you, Mrs. Jupp. Thank you very much indeed.
Steed said he would follow the same road as Cordell, and of course he did. He was welcomed at the Travel Bureau by Shaw.
Good day.
Good day. I'm looking for a ticket to Paradise.
Aren't we all?
One way.
I beg your pardon.
Well, you could say that I'm dead keen on it. Now, you're a travel agency. I don't see the slogan that applies to me on these posters. But perhaps it isn't for the ordinary public.
I don't think I quite understand. What slogan interests you?
Buy now, pay later.
I think you'd better come into the other office, Mr. Steed.
John Steed followed Shaw through the inner door. He was moderately surprised to see what appeared to be a completely empty room. It had one bed, comprised of spiked nails. Lying along the bed was a thin, sun-tanned, middle-aged man. He appeared to be in a trance. Steed looked around. There were a couple of chairs. The seats were also of nails. Steed stood.
A nice place you've got here.
Shh. You are in the presence.
Am I?
The presence of the Master. Wait. Master.
They advanced towards the man on the bed. Steed looked down.
But this man isn't breathing.
He's in a deep trance.
How long has he been like this?
He stopped breathing last Thursday. Or was it Friday?
And how long will he remain like it?
It is difficult to say. It takes a lot to wake him. Have you any money with you?
Oh, just some small change.
It may do the trick. Please give me all you have.
Oh, very well.
Thank you. He is sensitive to this sort of sound. Usually works. Lo, and when the grasshopper saith I go, then it is time for the fish to leap.
He's always like that. Profound, of course.
Master, we have a visitor, a child in search of the eternal truth. Then I saith this to you, seek, and ye shall find.
Hardly original.
Come with me and search. Come to me with the thirst for knowledge. What have you to bring? He's got money. He's got plenty of money. They are welcome. How much?
Oh, unlimited supplies.
They are doubly welcome. I shall take your hand and lead thee on a great adventure. Lo, and when the lotus withereth on the leaf, then it is time to go
to paradise?
Go to paradise? Eh? That's what he's here for. And why, dear boy, didn't you say so in the first place?
Oh, the Master got up from the plate of glass that had protected him from the bed of nails, Steed showed surprise at this deception.
Shame, isn't it? The real thing is so uncomfortable. One has to put on a show. The peasants expect it. They think one can't have wisdom without suffering. Such outdated thinking. We know different, don't we, Mr. Steed? John Steed. Glad to know you. And have some tea, I think. Suit you, Mr. Steed?
Fine.
How do you like your tea?
3 spoonfuls and 1 for the pot.
Oh, please. We don't mention that word here. Get the tea, please, Shaw?
Yes, master, at once.
Oh, do sit down, Mr. Steed. Just upend the seat of the chair. The other side is delicious foam rubber. Oh, yes, Mr. Steed. I am a charlatan, a fraud, a taker-in of the gullible.
Well, that makes 2 of us.
Yes, I am a charlatan, save in one respect. It's a secret I stumbled upon, a priceless secret which I'm prepared to impart to others for a fee.
I can see that you are a genuine faker. But of course I understand. I'm sure we could come to some arrangement.
From his pocket, Steed produced a large wad of £10 notes.
So you made a killing. I shall need 1/3, Mr. Steed.
Well, of course, that all depends on what you're offering in return.
Well, you've grown tired of life, dear boy. It's become unprofitable. Well, I'll arrange that you leave this life, dispense with it, shuffle off this mortal coil. It's a question of money.
Aye, there's the rub.
It is a transaction devoutly to be wished.
Oh, quite.
If you were dead, Mr. Steed, the world would not pursue you any further. The heat would be off, what? I'll arrange your death for you.
Well, frankly, I could arrange it myself.
But I offer special after effects. 1/3 of your money?
All right, I accept.
Excellent. You won't live to regret it, I promise you.
I sincerely hope I do.
Eh? What, dear boy?
Live.
Yes. Quite so. Have no fear.
Well, I'll be back later, and we can stay where you are.
Shaw had entered with a tray of tea and a gun.
I regret that you must stay, now that you're here.
But surely...
You already know too much about us. You must remain incommunicado until the whole delicate affair is over. I'm sorry, but those are the rules.
Incommunicado? Can't I even phone my mother?
Not even her.
Oh, very well, but when can you...
Your death is already arranged. It'll be violent, but quite painless. Shaw will take you. Go with him.
Go where?
And no more questions, please. Not until it's over. Trust us. You have to, anyway. You're in our hands now. Anything to say?
Yes. No flowers, by request.
On a street corner sometime later, Shaw guided Steed by the elbow.
This way, Steed. Now!
Shaw suddenly grabbed Steed by the shoulder and shoved him in the path of an oncoming van.
Next stop, Paradise.
Now?
Your death is already arranged, Mr. Steed. It'll be violent, but quite painless. Go with Shaw.
Go? Where?
Do as the master instructs, Mr. Steed. Come with me.
Yes, but I
No more questions, please. Not till it's over. Trust us. You have to, anyway. You're in our hands now. Go with Shaw.
On a street corner some little time later, Shaw guided Steed by the elbow.
This way, Steed. Now!
Shaw suddenly grabbed Steed by the shoulder and shoved him in the path of an oncoming van.
Next stop, Paradise.
Episode 6, the final episode of this story, in which John Steed joins the underground movement, and Emma Peel helps him to bring about the end of the mystery and arrest several dead men on a grave charge. John Steed had travelled the same path as Captain Cordell in his investigation into the mysterious deaths of several well-known shady financiers. He realized that Bagpipes Happy Chap of Happy Meadows was as innocent as he was ignorant of any chicanery. Through a clue given to him by Mrs. Jupp, widow of Jonathan Jupp, Steed had called at Mystic Tours. He'd been interviewed by Shaw and introduced to a bogus mystic called simply the Master. The Master had fleeced Steed of a third of his money and arranged his death at the hands of Shaw. Of course, Mother and Mrs. Peel were ignorant of all this, and as time passed, they became increasingly anxious about Steed's silence.
Unlike Steed.
Yes.
He's usually so talkative. Never stopped the man pestering me.
Yes.
Mrs. Peel reached for a telephone directory and paged through it.
The whole blasted case is out of control. Never made sense, not right from the beginning. Should never have allowed myself to be talked into it.
Yes.
No, Mrs. Peel, would you have the consideration to listen to me when I'm meandering? I might as well talk to myself and have an intelligent conversation.
Oh, sorry, Mother. This must be it.
What are you doing?
I'm looking up Mrs. Jonathan Jupp's telephone number. It's only an idea, but it's better than doing nothing. Don't you agree?
Mrs. Peel dialed the number, and to her surprise, got straight through.
Yes, this is Mrs. Jupp speaking.
Mrs. Jupp, have you had a Mr. Steed to see you lately?
Why, yes, I have. Why do you ask?
I wanted to know if he said where he was going after he left you.
I wouldn't know for sure.
As we say in the profession, could you give me an educated guess?
Pardon?
Any ideas?
Well, we did talk about the fact that my dear late husband, was negotiating with Mystic Tours. Perhaps he may have gone on to their offices.
Mystic Tours? Could be. Thank you, Mrs. Jupp.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Don't risk it, Mrs. Peel.
You don't think so, Mother?
Whatever tour you take, it'll only lead to one place. Do a day tour. Go straight to the center. Happy Meadows.
I've been there. Spent the whole night there. Didn't get me anywhere. Well, Happy Chap won't be very happy to see me.
What does that matter? People are dying to get in there. Go.
Happy Chap was at that moment extremely happy. He was issuing instructions to the two old retainers, Old Tom and Bob.
There you see. Now, Mr. Steed is dead. Thank goodness.
He looks it, Mr. Happy Lad. Mr. Happy Man.
He does, too.
He is. Now, we aren't going to have any more of this silly nonsense. Mr. Steed has caused a great deal of trouble. He must now be buried quietly once and for all. Irrevocably, absolutely, and with no question of doubt.
That's right.
Segment 69. Paradise.
Old Tom and Bob went about their duties.
Well, Mr. Happy Feller is pleased enough to bury his mistakes.
That's right.
But, Bob, we don't pack the earth in too hard, just in case they want him up again. Right?
Right.
Mrs. Peel knew John Steed better than anyone alive or dead. She was frankly unimpressed.
Impossible. I tell you, Mrs. Peel, that it is so. I can take you to the grave. There's no mistake. We don't make mistakes at Happy Meadows.
What about the empty graves of John Ash, George and Tony Barter, Patrick Vernon, Jonathan Jupp? Don't they count as mistakes?
Yes, well, of course, they're unaccountable. But there was the case of Captain Peter Cordell. At least we proved he is dead.
Yes, and that's just what worries me. Steed may die the same death. I'm sorry, Mr. Happy Chap, but I shall have to insist.
No, I positively refuse. I will not allow it. I won't.
But, again, a short time later...
That's it. Now then, to you, Bob.
To me, Tom.
Mrs. Peel, all this will cause you considerable pain. I do beg of you.
We've got this far. Let's continue to the death.
Now, please, Mrs. Peel. There. You can see for yourself. There he is.
There he isn't. No Steed.
I don't feel well at all.
Well, if he isn't here, where the devil is he?
Steed at that moment was in a large, well-appointed room that looked like everybody's idea of an upper-class nightclub.
More to drink, sir?
Thank you. Oh, no, the mind boggles. I wonder what it would have been like if I'd led a completely blameless life.
Not any better than this.
I think I spent all those years being careful. Now, this is really living.
Don't you mean dying?
Job?
You know me?
Well, of course, I've seen photographs in the papers, of course. And I was in finance myself, you know. Saw you in the city several times.
I suppose it is possible. Well, Mr. Steed, how do you like paradise?
Unimprovable, Mr. Shaw. Tell me, how did I get here?
That was my part of the bargain, Mr. Steed.
From out of the happy throng, the master appeared.
I said I had one genuine talent. Is that of being able to suspend animation. You were likely bumped in a street accident, just long enough to render you unconscious, but the world thinks you've been killed. After all, there was no pulse, breathing had ceased, your body temperature was below that necessary to sustain life. An illusion I created. To all intents and purposes, you were dead and buried.
But where are we?
Oh, look above you.
Steed looked up and saw several neat trapdoors in the cement ceiling. It suddenly became clear.
We're under Paradise Plot.
Exactly. These rooms run directly under Happy Meadows. The trapdoors lead up into the graves. It's just as easy to get down here as it is to get buried up there.
Simple, isn't it, Mr. Steed? Relax. There'll be no one chasing you down here. Enjoy yourself, Mr. Steed.
I shall. Well, Jupp, tell me more. I suppose you pop out once in a while, upstairs, I mean? You join the outside world?
Oh, no, never.
Well, don't you get just the teeniest bit curious as to what's going on up there?
They don't allow it. They reckon 2 years is about right to let things cool off.
2 years?
Yes, that's how long we have to stay here. Mind you, when you think of what I left behind, don't care one little bit.
It was at that point that Steed felt something fall onto his head. He brushed his hair with his hand. It was earth. Steed climbed onto a chair and examined the trapdoor. A small trickle of soil filtered through the crack. Someone was digging away at it.
It's got to be her. Only Mrs. Peel will try to get into paradise by such underhand means.
What do you think you're doing, Steed?
Just learning about life and death.
We can teach you far more about the latter, dear boy.
I knew there was something I didn't like about you.
Or perhaps the cut of my shroud.
We cannot take any chances, Mr. Steed. You must appreciate that. I'm afraid, old chap, we shall have to kill you.
But you've already done that once. And I'm alive and kicking.
With that, Steed shot off the chair and kicked Shaw in a vulnerable part of his anatomy. The master lunged forward with a gun. Steed engaged him. The roof fell in, literally, for Mrs. Peel came down through the trapdoor.
All right, Steed, let's get them.
Up above, with their feet firmly planted on the earth, old Tom and Bob watched with wonderment.
She be gone now. You know what I reckon, Bob? After all these years, I reckon we be in the wrong job. Ain't necessary. Dead-end job.
At that moment, Mrs. Peel arrived. She headed the procession back from Paradise. Shaw, Jupp, and the master, with their hands up, followed by Steed with a gun. Mr. Happychap, who had fainted, was being fanned back to life with old Tom's shovel.
He be coming round now.
Aye, be getting to his feet. Come along now, Mr. Happy Boy.
Happy fella.
Right, come on now, get going. Look alive there. Look alive.
Well, I don't believe it. I don't. Oh, this job will be the death of me. Oh, no. Oh.
Unfortunately, Mr. Happychap, who was standing too near the grave, fainted once again.
Shall we, old Tom? May as well.
apartment that night, Mother proposed a toast.
To the late John Steed, career resurrected, dead on time.
The Avengers.
Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers.